Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Alchemy with Sheeana Leigh. And today I am really excited because I have one of my best friends here with me to do this podcast, Eve, and I will introduce her to you shortly. But I wanted to share a little bit about her and mine connection and how we came to be and how we came to be sitting here together today on this big journey. So me and Eve met quite a few years ago now. I'm thinking it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And we were studying the same sex, love, and relationship coaching. And we connected through the internet and we met in Melbourne and we went to this like feminine sort of Shakti workshop. We looked into each other's eyes and eye gazed and we partnered up. And it was just such a soul igniting, heart expanding experience. And we connected so deeply. And from that moment on, we've pretty much been inseparable. So, in the short synopsis, we've both studied similar things, gone on different pathways, and the reason why I'm bringing Eve here today is to talk about a very real personal journey. And she's just been on this incredible journey through and out the other side of cancer. And we are going to get really raw and real on dancing with death today. So, a little bit edgy, but as you know, love to bring these taboo topics that need to be spoken about. And I just realized with her journey and speaking to her and being so connected with her through her experience, how much it was actually like really not spoken about, or really there was like a lack of support. Nobody, everyone's scared of this whole big death experience. So before we get deeper into that, I'm going to hand it over to Eve to actually introduce herself more formally, who she is, what she does, and yeah, her beautiful essence, bringing it forth into this space.
Thank you so much. Lovely. Oh my gosh. Yes, so my name is Eve and at the moment I'm going through a transition of what I do. Um and because of having to go through all of this, and I also had to have chemo as well, and that takes a massive toll on your body, as you can all imagine. So I've had to step back a little bit from the one-to-one interactions and journeys that I was taking other women on, or we were going on together. And um, the thing is that there's so much that I know. I know too much, and that is because of the experiences I've had, and also all the numerous amounts of study that I've undertaken. And it would be a bit criminal of me to just sit back and not provide any of that information. So I am doing it in different ways, whether that be coming on podcasts or creating wonderful ebooks and courses as well online. So I guess really there's a part of me that's going through a life transition, and that is exactly what I want to take other people on who are going through life transitions, whether that be from toxic relationships, heartbreak, to these kind of journeys with chronic illness. So that is me at the moment.
Yeah, rightly so. That's so big and that's so massive. And I'm sure we've all been touched by people in our lives that have gone through cancer or have had cancer or chronic illnesses. And I think that this is why it's so important that we bring this into these spaces to actually talk about it. People don't talk about it. They're kind of like really scared to talk about it, to speak up about it. There's a lot of like pain and grief and hurt intertwined in the experience. So it's so beautiful that you're here and showing up in this way and being able to talk about your journey, because I think it's going to be so transformational for so many people today. Like so many people that are listening to this to actually get a real understanding, because you do talk very raw and real and openly about your experience. But it's understandable. You've gone through this massive life transition and moving through a space of sitting with what's most important to you now, right? Like really sitting with that and like leading from that space, because it's actually once you've had a touch and a taste of death, like so close to you, I feel like it really shakes up so many of your like core beliefs and who you are as a person and how you show up in the world. Am I right?
You are. And it's not even in this, like, I don't know, maybe because the only sort of real experience that I've kind of had with cancer is that from movies and shows, and like, and it's like, oh, I'm so, I'm healed, and or whatever, or I'm so profound, and now I've got this like thirst for life, and I have to go out and do all these things naturally, or whatever, for whatever reason. Last year I was kind of, or the year before, I was sort of doing that. 2023, I was kind of going, you know what, finances, I really want to put my all into my business, I want to really make this work, and I was doing that, but I wasn't leaving anything sort of unturned. I still wanted to have experiences and do things, but the only problem was I was fatigued because I had cancer and I didn't know that. So even though I did all of these things, I was still, every time I'd be like, should I do it? Should I do it? Be like, YOLO, you only live once, yet just do it. And like, unbeknownst to me at this time, at that moment in time, I had cancer and I didn't know. So it was almost like my body did know, and we'll get to that
Perfect.
before anything else did. And so, yeah, it put me on this trajectory into having that. But what has happened since then is that I feel like I will not be silenced. I
Mhm.
feel like I do have a lot to give. And if that's in a different way to what I thought it was, then so be it. It doesn't have to be the bright lights and the sparkles and all of those things. It can be in a completely different way. And so for me, it was coming at an angle of how can I do this in a way that's going to both nourish me in supporting my fatigue and chemo and cancer journey. And also, but I want to give, I still want to give, and I still want to be able to, provide people with insights into how they can do it too. So I've started writing a book. It's not a self-help book, it's a psychological thriller. Again, because it feels really right for me. My story in my life was like psychological thriller, and I want to tell my story. And the only way I feel like I could really do that is by writing a wonderful book, and a story in a way that feels really nourishing, but not like you're reading somebody's trauma.
Yeah.
It's a story. So that kind of is, again, that sparked in me from this cancer journey. It sparked in me that I really want to speak about it, but not to the depths. I don't want to live in it again because I already spent more than enough years living in that PTSD of all of that.
Yeah.
So writing this book is helping me heal, and it's also getting the story out there of what can happen, in terms of gaslighting and toxic relationships as well.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. I've heard your full story before. I'm one of the lucky ones about like your life and everything you've kind of been through to get you to this point. And yeah, I would love for you to, if you feel called to share about little bits and pieces. Of course, you don't have to go into too much. But I feel like it's really resonant with like how the body speaks to you, how the body holds on to trauma, and also about how you were able to really, especially in this line of work and your area of expertise, how you were actually able to feel that something was wrong within your body or something was not in alignment within your body, and really were able to like catch the cancer per se before it came to a point of like no return and have gone through that journey. And I really feel like it'll really touch a lot of people's lives. So if you care to share, my love, again, going into it as deep or as gentle as you wish. But yeah, I think it really does tell the tale of like how you've come to this experience in your life.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it really does. I mean, when you look at the metaphysical so I had bowel cancer, and when you look at the metaphysical for that, it's literally, you could say that that was the bio of my life. It was, um, leading up to that point. There was a smear campaign put out there about me, and when you read the metaphysical about bowel cancer, it describes that to a T. So what happened for me, and thank you for asking this question, because this is one of the things that I want to talk about, because I think, it's not just awareness of cancer, but it's awareness of social media as well. Because for a long time I was having symptoms. I felt really sick all the time. I just felt really fatigued. Um, there really wasn't anything. If you were to read like the symptoms of bowel cancer, I had really had none of them. There was no blood.
Mhm.
My um, stools were fine. Like there was nothing that was too scary about any of that. I did have, intolerance to some foods. And it was really what happened was I kept having heart palpitations. And the heart palpitations would happen at sort of 3 a.m. and I could hear it. I could hear it in my ears. So it wasn't a case of, am I having a panic attack? Like what's happening? And that kept on happening. And I kept trying to figure out, am I having panic attacks? Like why am I anxious? What's going on? And of course that would perpetuate the the irregular heartbeat. So I would hear the heartbeat in my ear as well. It would wake me up, the dum 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 and the dum 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 kind of thing. And it was really scary to hear it. And I'd be lying there for 30 minutes thinking, what's going to happen? Do I call an ambulance? Like this would happen really regularly. I would have this debate of whether or not I should call an ambulance.
Mhm. I've been there. I don't know. What is with us asking for help or reaching out for help when we actually need it?
I
So
think,
terrible.
I think if it was during the day, it felt better during the day, but never happened during the day apart from the last time it did. And it always happened at 3 o'clock in the morning or around, early hours of the morning. And so, but I think it was because part of me thought it was a panic attack. And then what I would do is I'd get up and I'd walk around. And as long as I could still breathe air through my nose, through my lungs, and I could feel it coming out of me, I was just like, okay, I'm still alive. It's fine. So I would get up and I'd go for random walks at, early hours of the morning, just around the house, to try and feel and make sure that nothing underworld was going to happen. And then I'd go to sleep. I never went to the doctor. And I did end up going to the doctor, but it wasn't something that concerned me too much until it happened during the day. And so I was on the train on my way to work and I started getting heart palpitations. Now I was on my way to an interview for a job as well this day. And so again, I was like, maybe it's anxiety. I don't know. And I got to work and I was telling someone I thought I'd got bitten by a spider and maybe that's what had happened. Maybe it was a bit poisonous and I was just feeling a bit unwell. I wasn't sure. And then I ended up going to the doctor and she sent me for an ECG, came back perfectly fine because nothing was wrong with my heart that day. Nothing was, it was the same day, but by that point, by the time I'd got to the doctor, it was all fine. And up until this point, the feeling of not, of feeling a little bit unwell, feeling fatigued, the food, sort of intolerance of food, the memory loss, the bit scatty. I put it down to everything else because every single time I opened social media and I saw someone saying, oh, ADHD, here are the symptoms. Oh, perimenopause, here are the symptoms. And I just literally put it down to all those things. Like I was like, oh, I've definitely got ADHD. I'm definitely, food intolerant. I'm definitely perimenopause because I'm at that age. And it's not to say that maybe I don't have any of those things, but it definitely masked the fact that there could be something else. And so I went to the doctor. She ended up taking the blood test as well, got the blood test results back, a few days later, and I kept getting these messages come up on my phone. Kidney's fine, kidney function's fine, liver function's fine, thyroid's fine. And then I got a phone call. And the doctor said, Eve, you've got really low iron, and that's why you're having heart palpitations. And so I kind of thought nothing of it because a lot of women have low iron. And she said, the thing is, because I was 43 at the time, she said, I know you're sort of, nearing that age, but you're not that age. And I'm just wondering, and I'd really like to get to the root cause of this loss of blood. And she started asking me about my cycle, and there was nothing different about my cycle. It had been remained the same. And so she said, okay, well, we don't want to rule that out. We'll come back to that. And then she asked the penultimate question, which I know you would ask your client, and I know I've asked mine. Where do you feel it is in your body? For a GP to ask that question is a phenomenal thing to occur, as I'm sure all of you listening would agree with me, because and I just want to add as well. So she also is a trained yoga teacher. So it kind of makes sense when I read back and looked at her bio, because this is the first time I'd ever seen this doctor as well, because you could never get in to see her. It just so happened that she happened to have an appointment, the only doctor that had an appointment that day. And yeah, so she asked me, where do you feel it is in your body? And I said, my gut. I think it's in my gut. And I cannot tell you what made me think that. And she was on the phone and I closed my eyes and I just knew instinctively it was in my gut. And she said, all right, what we do is we'll arrange a colonoscopy. We'll do a gastroscopy, whatever it is, gastroscopy, yes, and a colonoscopy. And we'll, yeah, and we'll get that done. 2 weeks later, I went and had that. And when you go in, you have to sign a form to say that if they find anything, they'll tattoo it. And then that will cost like an extra however many, hundreds of dollars. If they find polyps, they'll get rid of them again. That will cost an extra however many dollars. And so, well, I wasn't going to tick it because I was like, oh, I'm sure everything's going to be fine. Like, I don't even think this is it. But I reckon he's just going to tell me I've got leaky gut. Convinced I had leaky gut, because why? Because I'd seen it on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So I had obviously had it all done, and then my beautiful friend came to pick me up to collect me, because obviously I'd been under anesthetic and had to have someone there to take me home. And we were sitting there for ages, and the receptionist said, oh, he wants to see you. And I said, well, like it's been 15 minutes already. And the weird thing as well was I noticed the guy that was behind me had come out before me, which was a bit odd. And so, and I thought, well, the thing is they haven't asked me for more money. So obviously there was no polyps and they haven't tattooed me. So I'm pretty sure like I'm fine. Went up to the reception and said, look, I've got to go, because my friend had to pick up a little boy from daycare. And just as I was at the receptionist, she was like, no, you can't, he needs to speak to you. I said, well, can't he call me or send me the report in the post? And as I was saying that, he opened the door and he called me in. So I went in and he stood there with the door open, and my friend just sat there in the waiting room and he was looking at her. And I thought, oh, he's obviously prompting and to come in. And I said, oh, can she come in? He said, yep, she could come in. And so we went into his office, and literally as soon as we sat down, he said, so there is a mass and it is cancer. And I can't really tell you the rest of the conversation because it was the last thing, the very last thing. It does not run in the family, or unless it does and nobody has ever noticed it. I don't know. Yeah, so that was a massive shock, and my friend asked all the questions for me. And then, yeah, after that moment, I came home and I was like, oh, I'm going to have to tell my mum and dad. Like, they're in the UK. So that was honestly a comedy of events, trying to get. I've ever had a phone conversation quite like it. But they knew that I was going for a colonoscopy, and I think they just thought the same as me, that it was just going to be leaky gut. And my mum was outside doing the washing, like hanging the washing on the line, and my dad was going, so how'd it go? And I'm like, yeah, I'll just, when mum comes back, I'll tell you. He's like, yeah, she's out doing the washing and showing me. And then I'm just like, yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. And you know, and like this really occurs to me that, and I think we do this a lot, is that I was wanting to hold space for them.
Mhm.
And I think that's when you go into that, you know, into what we were talking about before, and the reality of it all was like that was a moment that I needed to be held, but I didn't want to upset them. So I had to hold, you know, I had to get myself into that space. And I'm pretty sure that if I hadn't have done all of the training that I've done, that I think it would have been, I don't think I would have done it quite as well as I did. But incidentally, I did come home and the first person I did call was you. Um, and, which obviously helped me to be able to then have that conversation with them. And yeah, and you know, and I obviously ended up telling them, but yeah, the whole time my dad was going, so how'd it go? So how'd it go? And I was like, yeah, we'll just, mum, let's just wait for mum to get back. And yeah, but how did it go? Like, yeah, I know what you're asking, but can we just wait? And he wouldn't wait. And anyway, I got them both sitting down, and I told them, and yeah, like and it's very typical British family, you know, very stiff upper lip. And but when it was when my mum said, "Oh, my baby," that was when I think the penny dropped for me. But I didn't really cry a lot, you know. It still didn't feel like it was real. Because I honestly just I know it sounds really stupid. I thought I was immune from cancer because no one in my family had it. Like my granddad did. He had lung cancer because he smoked pretty much all of his life, but it wasn't a big thing in the family. It was, you know, it's more like heart attacks and heart conditions in the family rather than cancer. But yeah, so that happened, and then I just found myself in this weird space that I can only acknowledge what, yeah, it's like this holding ground that you sit in. It's like no man's land. Time kind of stands still, but it doesn't because you're kind of like waiting. It's like, okay, what's the next step? Next step is you hear from the hospital. Well, I'm sitting here 2 weeks later. I still haven't heard from anybody. So I ring the colonoscopy. Oh, yeah, well, your report's still sitting on our desk. And I said, well, okay, well, that's great. But I think I have cancer. Well, I know I have cancer, and I'm wondering if it's anywhere else in my body. So can we maybe get that moving? Next minute, I know I have a phone call from the hospital, CT scan, to go and have a CT scan. That happens. Again, I'm sitting and waiting. So this like holding period of where time feels like it stands still, but it also feels like it is sped up because you're kind of sitting there going, I don't know if I'm going to die soon or if I'm going to be okay. Like I just don't know. So in that period of time, and bearing in mind this whole time I'm still working. I'm still working, but they were very flexible. They allowed me to work from home and pick my hours and, you know, when I could and all that stuff. But of course, I have to finance all of this. So I have to make sure when I get to surgery that I've got enough money to be able to have that 2 weeks off so I don't have to work. So, you know, it's not just this, am I going to die? You still have to think like, but financially, what's going to happen? I need to look at all of that as well. You know, I'm a single person. I don't have anyone here that can help me with that or you know, get me a cup of tea or give me a hug. None of that stuff. So, you know, and this is what I really want to talk about because I don't think this does get spoken about enough is when you are, and it's hard enough. It's hard enough. Like, I'm not saying it's harder for me because I was single. I'm saying it is hard for people who are single because there's that missing element of like when you just want to have a cup of tea. And and you just can't get out of bed. And all you want is someone to bring it to you. Like, those little things become really fucking precious. The time with people becomes so nourishing. That it's, and that actually work was really good for me, because it meant I can just be normal for this 8 hours and I cannot think about where this is going to lead. Like, I'm just working. I'm doing my job, my 9 to 5. So, you have this real dance with death of like, am I going to survive this, or is this all there is? And the thing that came to me, and this is when I did cry, was when I said to myself, oh, this would be so hard to say without crying. I've never known love, and I've never experienced love in the way that I wanted to. So I can't leave this world without feeling that. And so I connected to the cancer with love, because it was the only thing in me at that time that I wanted to experience so much. And it's, we had a beautiful sister in our cohort of sex, love, and relationship coaches, Karen, who had cancer, and she passed from it. And they found it when she was giving birth. Or no, I think she was pregnant, and I think they found it then. And she always came from it from the fact of she had to love the cancer. And you would never hear her say fuck cancer or anything. It was all from that. And so I took from what I'd seen from her, and I did some really wonderful, beautiful things. Like, I know Sheeana teaches this to her clients and to the women that she sits in workshops with, and that is to sit and work somatically with that part, and to do aspecting work with the pillows. And I did a lot of that with the cancer, and formed this relationship with the cancer, because to me it was all my trauma that I didn't get to speak, that I didn't get to share. And I think that's where this, for me, writing this book is really where I get to clear a whole lot of that trauma out, in a way that is healthy, and it's not exposing, it's not, it's treated with care, and it's not venomous, and it's in a way that creates a space for me to break things down. But the cancer showed me that, it was like when I went in and asked what do you need, and it just said love. I need to be acknowledged that this is all of the past hurts, all of the things that that have eaten away at you, and of course it's gonna be sitting in my gut, because that's where our worth sits, that's where our self-worth sits. And since from a young age I've always hated myself, and it's taken me such a gradual path to get to this point of dancing with death, to feeling the love that comes with that, with the death. And that, when we feel like we're in those dark times, actually the darkness calls in the light. And sometimes, just even having the darkness is just a wonderful occurrence, because it can't all be light. It cannot. And you get to then experience the light in such a different and profound way, that the light that you thought was the light might not actually be what you are searching for, or that's giving you the shine and the glow. Like maybe there's something else there. And so this cancer has brought me on this sort of journey to unfold all of that. And you know, I know I've said this to you before, Sheeana, I know about how we worked on Unravel together. And my theory is that program that we ran was the starting of it to unearth the cancer for me. And I don't mean that in a way like everyone who's going to do Unravel is going to have, it's like it, but it does unravel, and it unraveled this part of me that was so deep and intertwined in my gut that that it exposed it to the point, you know, I was so lucky because when I had the CT scan, I was also told afterwards, because I had to have a pick put in my arm for the, so it's a line put in your arm so you can have the chemo infusion sort of bypass your veins at the bottom. So it goes in the top and it kind of goes through into your chest, and it's like a little kind of portal in your arm that makes it a little easier for them to get the chemo in. And I had that put in, and when I was at that, the doctor said to me, "Can I ask you, how did you know that you had cancer?" And I told her the story, and she went, "That's phenomenal." She said, "Because I looked at your CT scans and you can't even see it on the CT scan." So it's interesting. I mean, it was a 5 centimeter tumor. I don't know what way, but it had made its way, was just about to come through the wall of the colon. And then when I had surgery, because they can't tell you as well, they can't tell you what stage until surgery, which is really hard. Because again, you're kind of like, well, obviously they can't tell that stuff, but again, you're kind of like, well, I don't know what stage this is at. I don't know. I don't know much. And then and then once you have your checkup again, they sort of say, "Oh yeah, it's stage blah blah blah." But mine was kind of in between. So you have the stages, and then within the stage, you have the like tier. So tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and obviously the further down you go, the sort of worse it gets. So I was at tier 4, going on to 3, and 3 is when it's moved into other areas. So again, I had to go through this death cycle because it moved from tier 4, stage 2, to stage 3, tier 1. And that to me was like another sort of devastating blow. I didn't kind of get told that until whilst I started taking chemo. Honestly, I could talk for ages because there's so much more that's coming into my mind as I'm saying all of this stuff, and the death and the death of all of these things. You know, the chemo felt like my addiction days, and that felt so obscure to me. I was completely sober, but somehow I was feeling like I was back on, on these drugs, and I was in addiction, but I was completely sober. And, and that really put me back into a space of, I'd wake up feeling like, fuck, I feel like I've been on a right bender for the last week. I'm so tired and I feel groggy and I don't know how I'm going to work today. And, and it put me in this space that was so weird, because it was like I thought I'd finished with that part of my life, but it sort of came back and I was just doing this crossover of addiction with chemo, and it felt odd because the sensations that were happening to me were ones that I was remembering. So I was feeling the sensations in my body, and I was thinking to myself, oh my God, I remember this feeling of like, if I'd taken way too many pills, or, but you weren't getting the high, you were just getting the low, low, low. And yeah, so that was another really big, interesting piece as well, because it was the death of all of that, and dancing with the addiction again, and like maybe I just go get a drink. maybe I just go do that. Maybe that will help me. So at least I do have a high at this moment in time in my life. But I didn't do it. And and then of course before chemo you have to have a discussion with a fertility doctor if you're obviously of a certain age. And I'm the age I'm at, you know, there's still a small chance of hope of a baby, very small, but it's there. And that all got taken away in a day or two, and it's like that kind of stuff where you really have to go through the motions whilst also holding space for other people to tell them this news because there are people who want to be there and who are there, and people wanted to come with me to these appointments, and I had to say no because it was easier for me to process than have somebody there with me who was also going through their own journey with this, because perhaps they hadn't been through it as deep with other people before. And so there's a lot of lessons there trying to just really navigate how on earth do I, how on earth do I go through this? Still trying to work and pretend everything's fine. But feeling all these things, it was tricky. But again, if I hadn't have worked on my sexuality, if I hadn't have done healings, any sexual healing or any, even in relationships and all of that, everything that we learn in that course and beyond. So I did pelvic health course, I've done somatic attachment therapy course, all of these other things have led me to be able to gather all of the tools, allow myself to cry when it feels like there's no apparent reason to do that, and go with the emotions of all of it. And it's been dancing with death, because that's what I had to do as well. I danced with the chemo. So of the morning, I'd have to dance with it because I did not want to take it. I didn't want it in my body. In fact, I didn't want it in my body that much that my body completely rejected the infusions, and I had to stop doing them because I ended up in emergency, and the doctors thought it was best not to continue with that. And I knew that was going to happen. I knew it. I already knew my body didn't want that. And, and I had to then as well sit with, how do I do chemo or not? And I'm tired of making decisions by this point. Like, I'm exhausted. And it was just so much easier for me to just go do it. And yeah. And now I finished chemo on January 31st. I said I will not go into 2025 taking any of those tablets. And they let me do that.
December 31st, yeah?
Oh, sorry, December 31st, yeah. So I finished then, and so now it's just surveillance, hopefully, just checking and making sure everything's okay.
Massive journey. Thank you so much for being so raw and sharing your whole story here. There were so many key points I actually wanted to reflect on, and I think that it's going to be hard to try and retrace my steps to reflect some of these key points back, but I'm going to try my hardest. One of the points I really wanted to reflect back that was really highlighted to me is the effects on social media with self-diagnosis. And you're so right, at this point in time, in this moment in time, there is a huge wave of self-diagnosis via ADHD, on the spectrum, autism, like all of these different flavors that are really, I see them constantly and everywhere, but to my surprise, cancer is nowhere to be seen. Cancer is kind of completely shadowed and in the dark. And that's something that's like I really wanted to talk about here and really bring up because I'm sure many people haven't actually sat with you and heard your entire story and what's gone on for you and how it's transpired because people, like you said, are a little bit uneasy and afraid because it's so far in the shadows. Because, people have cancer or get cancer and then they kind of do get a little bit like reclusive and a little bit sometimes shut down and try and carry a lot of the burden and weight themselves to not cause pain and inflict pain onto others and carry the emotional labor for everyone else around that. And that was really evident to me in your experience because obviously we don't live near each other, but we do get on these Zoom calls and connect. But just hearing about the lack of support and the way people show up and are really actually, it comes from their own wounding and their own like fear and they don't want to get close to this thing, right? And as soon as you went into like that's the thing. That's the first thing you've seen on movies. It's the first thing you understand. It's like, I have cancer, I'm gonna die. Like that is basically the story. And because you don't hear or see these massive stories of people getting cancer and living through it. Our dear friend Karen Louise, who I'd like to speak on, she did pass away. And her motto was to love cancer. She went on news, she spoke about it because even cancer and cancer cells, like if you get into like the way our body works and how our body works, the cancer is actually your body's natural human response to try and heal itself and to cure itself. So when you even move into that aspect of like the body's actually working for you and towards you, but that's not the story we're told and sold. We're told and sold this massive story of like cancer is trying to kill you and it's awful and you're going to die. And so I can definitely understand how as soon as you get that diagnosis, especially unbeknownst to you, shockingly, throughout any symptoms, like you go down a massive like death portal and spiral. Like you are dancing with death. You are, am I going to die? Am I not going to die? What's important to me? And you don't want to carry the burdens and the emotional labor of everyone else around you, of course. And it shouldn't be that way. It really upset me like wholeheartedly beyond belief that people are so fucking petrified to sit with somebody who could possibly be dying because, like it is a natural part of life. Like humans are so frightened and afraid of anything to do with death. And it's not just cancer and chronic illnesses and all of these like things. Like we're going to die of old age. Like that's going to happen. If we're blessed enough, if we're privileged enough, we will die of old age. Like it's so intrinsically intertwined with our life experience, but yet we run towards the opposite direction of death. And this is, I see this in, as you would too, with all your pelvic work and stuff, the amount of like australite, I can't even say that word today, so I'm going to scrap that. I'm going to go a different route. But it's like the severe aloneness that people feel going through these massive things because they don't know how to present it neatly packaged to other people. People who've experienced like miscarriages, who've gone through abortion, like anything that's like really taboo and connected to like death experiences, people, they it's just so part of our nature and we're so afraid to be with people and it just like breaks my heart because that is a moment in time where you should be surrounded, you should be supported, you should be able to like let go, surrender and receive like all of the love, all of the support, like people. But it's like we have to teach people how to show up in those spaces. We have to openly speak about this, like your journey, your experience. Speaking about it brings it to the light so people go, oh, this is the journey that, she's been on. Like I can be uncomfortable in this, I can be uncomfortable in this with her. And I think that, that passageway of like death doularing and stuff is so precious in this life because it's so fucking needed because of your story in and of itself. And you're just one of probably millions of people who have experienced this aloneness, feel this like separation from the collective in a moment where, when I think back to like tribes days and when we were living in tight-knit communities, if somebody was moving through a death portal and dancing with death, they would be. They would, the community would come and be around them and hold them and like birth them into death, basically, doula them into death deliciously. Like you would have the whole tribe rallying, like, and that's just so fucking sad that in society now we're just so petrified of hearing of this because we're so scared of like getting the contagious death. When it's like, it's coming for us all, honey. It's coming for us all. Like, like, please, for the love of God, like start to understand death and these massive things. Like you don't have to be comfortable in them. Like there's moments and times of listening to your story that there is uncomfort in my system, right? And there is some deep grief and sorrow of like that I can't be there and I can't take away your pain, but that is not yours to carry and it shouldn't have to be, you know? I'm sure there was so many more nuggets of wisdom, but that's all I've got at the moment from you sharing that experience. And how odd that another thing I wanted to really hit on too is definitely like your connection to your body and your internal like sanctum. I think that that is a key factor, you know, with these sorts of things, because when you know something's wrong, and the medical industry is a system that I will quite loudly detest and hate from the bottom of my soul. I'm very vocal about it because, you know, when there is something wrong, and don't get me wrong, there is a time and the place. Like you've chosen chemo, there is death experience where people need emergency medical care. Absolutely. There is a place for it. I guess. I suppose I'll add that in. But also for these things that like it's like they just completely sever from our natural intuition, our body wisdom, and our body's capability to heal itself. Like I just on personal reflection, I'll make this really tiny. I'm moving through like some pretty icky like health problems at the moment, and I've gone into the system and tried to attain help because I know there's something wrong internally inside. Like I'm like, there's some, and they don't believe you. They, you know, they have a checklist. They're like, oh, okay, but does anybody have that in your family? Oh, okay, but you know, oh, well, what makes you think you've got that? And it's like,
Yep.
listen to me. I know. I'm very in touch with my body. I know. So I really wanted to just state that as well. It's like when you know, and there is this like little niggling, this intuition, this body wisdom inside you that is really singing out to you, even if you can't name it, even if you can't label it, like it is so imperative that you listen to it. Like it's so true because if that hadn't have been the case, if you hadn't have done this work and if you hadn't have, you know, moved through all of these things like unravel and your body wisdom and all of your pelvic care expertise, like, you know, and if you didn't listen to that, like who knows where you would be. Like it's actually quite frightening. But also really wonderful and powerful and miraculous because it's like I listened to my body, I listened to the call, this is where it is. And I was able to get it and move through chemo, which I know was a journey for you as well, especially in our line of work and our all natural green juices. Go and fucking water fast for 30 days and you'll heal yourself. Um,
There's no energy, like no energy for that, you know. And like again, being single, it's like I can barely get out of bed. Like I can't go and do those things. I'd love to, but yeah, it's really tricky.
it is really tricky. And I know that there's like persecution and judgment and stuff that you have to move through internally and externally to make the right choice for your body as well. So, you know, it is a big journey and you're here and you're out the other side now and you're able to talk about it and yeah, hopefully help so many other people that are moving through this experience, or perhaps they're a friend or a family member or something and they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know how to be around somebody that's moving through this. They don't know how to sit in their own uncomfort and be in the death portal or dance with death delicately to allow the person to have their experience and move through it like delicately, tenderly. Like that's what we deserve, you know?
Mm. Yeah, and that's a great point. And cancer isn't always terminal.
Mhm.
I think the chemo journey that in itself is, they're two separate things. They're two separate things. I think we do. Obviously, you have chemo because of cancer, but that journey is wildly different. It was for me wildly different. Um, and yeah, I don't think there's a lot of support around that chemo piece that there should be.
Yeah. But it is like toxins, like you're actually just getting, like I was with you a lot on video calls, hearing about your story about what your body was moving through, how your body was reacting to the chemicals being flushed through your system. And, it is like toxic chemicals but being washed through your body, which again is another experience of like death. Like, is this going to kill me? Your body rejected it, for God's sake. Like, your body actually rejected it. It was like, no, 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 no. Um, so, and it's all well and good because I know, oh, well, I personally, I think about death probably a lot more than the average human. And I like to sit in this space of like what ifs and like this mystical fantasy land of like what would happen if I got cancer? And it's all well and good for me to sit there and go, if I had cancer, I would go on a retreat and I would disappear into the jungle and do it this way. But that is not reality. It's not based on reality and real facts and grounded in like your life and your situation, and all of these things have to be taken into consideration to make this choice for you moving into that space, right? And like, I do believe we make the best choice for ourselves moving through this. And it's interesting because it's still not an easy choice, right?
No, I mean, and things happen really quickly, as well. Like you kind of don't have you're at this appointment, and then they're like, oh, you have to sign this to say that you want to have chemo, and I'm like, well, can I sign it and then not want it? Like they're like, yeah, sure. And but it's like, oh, well, then why am I signing it? Like I don't. And it's just all this sort of, oh, now you have to have a conversation with the fertility doctor. And it's like, oh, yeah, you have to have a conversation. And then, okay, well, the fertility doctor gives you all these different options. And you're sort of going, okay, well, literally, okay, I have to make a choice about that. Yeah, because chemo starts in 3 days. So,
Yeah.
it's just like, but won't start in 3 days because if I do option A, B, or C, then I have to wait however many months and then that puts chemo back. But I want to do chemo now because I just want to get it done. It's all of these things that are just like, and yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of information, but not the information that I think is needed. I think there's a lot missing. There's a little tiny thing of oh, because you might get chemo induced menopause, so okay, bye. And you're like, what? Hold on. Like, are you not gonna like provide me with all the information? Like, how, why, what's gonna happen to me? Like, am I gonna go through chemo and that's gonna happen? Like, what the fuck? So you're kind of left with a lot more questions than answers. Like the more that happens, and yeah, I've gone and resourced a lot of stuff, which I'm hopefully going to bring to everyone else as well. That's kind of my plan of resourcing a whole heap of stuff that I just think was missing. Being told, oh, go to the Cancer Council website. It's like it's not enough. It's not enough to just be sitting and scrolling and going, oh, you can call them. It's like, but I want to talk to the same person every time. I don't want to have to call and speak to different people about, the different things. Like I need to be held and supported, not just by these random people. I know it's a great thing. I don't want to put it down. I think it's great, but for me, it wasn't enough.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there is a lack of, and this is in general around the medical industry, and there's like a lack of informed consent. It's kind of like it's a very black and white industry. And I'm a woman who lives in the gray. So it's really interesting because it is check boxes and this, and it's black and white, but then they don't allow for like a full range of experiences, emotions. Like there's so many aspects and pieces left out of the field that I believe are detrimental for making an informed decision on your health and your body. And this is not just in, you know, death and moving through these like chronic illnesses. It's like birth, the same one in the same nutshell. It's just kind of like it's stripped bare from you until you kind of, because they only have these pathways and that's it. So you either need to go through these pathways and listen to them to have that outcome. There's no integrative, like holistic experience whatsoever, which I feel like is a real shame and a real lack of care within the industry. And it just really upsets me on a very deep, deep soul level, to be quite honest. Because, like you said, it's quick. And that's how, like, they make you make decisions so quick. So you can't take it away and you can't go, oh, okay. You can't sit with your body. You can't sit with the energy. You can't like commune. And that was like one of the things that you did that I loved about your journey is actually building that connection and communing with these cells within your body because it is the key element. Like it's not connection is the element that I believe is the foundation for healing and moving through, you know, mending and repair. Like it's that's it. That's the number one thing. And it doesn't matter if it's like an ailment or an illness or if it's like a love or a relationship or, you know, it's actually that is the glue, the intricate web that kind of binds them together and helps us like move into that wholeness and love element, which is what you were doing beautiful. And I love that that was your message. It's like I haven't experienced, you know, that love and you basically move through a whole self-love experience to experience that in life. That's what you desire and that's so fucking yum.
Yeah. And you know, like as you were saying that, I too think about death a lot, probably more than the average. And I've always thought about it. And it's usually been come from a, you know, a from a way of self-hate that I just don't want to be here anymore. And, you know, that was definitely something throughout my teens, up in, you know, for a very long time until I got sober and then started to realize, because everyone used to say to me, you need self-love, you need to love yourself. And I'd be like, fuck off. Like, I don't, what does that even mean? You can't tell someone to just go love themselves when they've hated themselves for decades. Like, it doesn't work like that, you know? And so that is one of the things, the key things I love working on, because it's not just about that, you know, wanky self-love thing. Like, I get it, but it's not fluff and light. Like, there's a whole lot of shit in there that needs to be mushed around, moved about. Maybe it returns every now and then. But when you truly, really do get to that point of self-love, it's like, because guaranteed, if I was still drinking, I wouldn't have even gone to the doctor. Guaranteed. I wouldn't have even sussed it out. I would have thought it was the drugs that kept doing that to me. And if I did know that I had cancer, I probably wouldn't have done anything about it because I would have just been like, let it take me. I don't care. I don't want to be here anymore. And that's where that piece really did sink in after all this time, after all these years, being pretty much 10 years sober, of this acceptance of self, acceptance of all the shit that's happened to me. Because one of the things is that I think about, all of the traumas have brought me to this point. All of the trauma I have endured in my life, which is a fucking shit ton, has brought me to this point to be able to love myself fully. And even the parts that show up that aren't particularly wonderful or lovely, or that we would not want, like the cancer, and be able to go in and say, I will hold you and I will love you in this moment. And that, I think, you know, looking at it like that, in that perception, was another massive thing. And I did actually work a lot with angels as well when I first found out, and that's something that I haven't done in a really long time. And it was phenomenal for me to do because it kind of, again, gave me a connection, right, to something outside of self. which was just really, again, it was just so nice. I would do these beautiful angel meditations every single morning, every single night, sometimes in the afternoon if I was feeling really anxious about it. And, and I'd speak to the cancer and say, please don't grow anymore. Like, we're having this connection now. You don't need to grow anymore. Like, I've got you. And, and that again, going back to that self-love thing of, going back to self-love and how that is a remarkable turn of events in itself to be able to get to that. So yeah, that was a just wanted to share that because
Love that.
my head
I
went.
just love that life can be such a unexpected experience and things can flip around and do a 180 at any moment. And the trajectory of your life and where you think you're going and your path gets flipped upside down and inside out, as do you. You move and get flipped inside out, and you're left spinning and sitting in this space of complete presence and being like, what the fuck was that? And you don't know what to do, where to go. You've got nothing to hold on to. But what I love most about this life and the ride of life is that we truly have the gift of alchemizing, our pain into power. We really have the gift of moving our grief into gold and into our gifts. And, I feel like that is very resonant with your journey here, right? Like you have gone through absolute shit, like your full story. One day people will be able to read about in a book of the horrendous things that was happened to you and the amount of trauma that was inflicted on you by people surrounding you that were meant to love you and support you. And not just that, there's been this whole life journey, and it almost was like the cancer, like this near death experience. And I know personally that wasn't your first dance with death or near death experience, as have I have had quite multiple near death experiences. And it's just so horrendous, but also so enriching at the same time. It's like when you actually like sink into the soil of it, like when new blooms start to come about with a fresh new life. And then not only that, but you can then reach out and extend like an extended hand to others around you and like use your own internal alchemization and your own journey to then pass on to others. Like it's like your legacy, right? And your medicine and your craft that you're like, this is my embodied deep wisdom. And nobody has embodied deep wisdom than a woman who has danced with death, to be quite fucking honest, and who has swirled around in all of their sea of shit, right? Like metaphorically and also physically. But there is no deeper woman that has danced with grief and come out the other side and gone, okay, like, and this is going to be your medicine. Like the amount of people that I actually see you helping in the future from this journey and from this experience and bringing such a like dark, shadowy topic to light, it actually really expands me in ways that you don't even imagine because I feel like we should have spaces where we talk about this. I feel like we should have spaces where we're supported and held and honored and like showing up in like, I'm in this death portal and it is raw and I don't know how to be and it's fucked. And everyone be okay with that. Because that's true. Like, it's because that is the epitome and the experience of life in its full circle, and the more we turn away and shun from it, I just, there's a disconnect there. There's such a disconnect that I would just love to erase because it's just so dishonoring for our souls and our bodies and who we are and our whole experience. I've been in places where like because it's like you have this funeral, you have this passing, and then it's just like as soon as we get close to that experience of death, personally or interpersonally, like with people around us, something profound cracks open within us, like a new sense of life, a new, like, that nothing makes you taste life like experiencing death.
Yeah, and again, for me, it wasn't this like, it wasn't the, "Oh, that's it, I'm free and I can go," there is this sense of freedom, yeah, for sure. But it's like, when I really break it down, the fact that my body has been in survival mode for all of these years, for about 4 decades, to now getting to this point of, yeah, I feel, even when I thought I was safe, my body was still fighting and I didn't know. But it's so funny because even though I didn't know, my nervous system was at an all-time high last year. All-time high. Like, I was in scarcity, I was fearful of things, I was, and it just shows that that's what happens. And I just felt like so nervous. I felt like a nervous wreck, and I was sleeping all the time, and all these things. And like, to bring it back to, I can now see I'm on the other side of cancer, and I can see what it was doing to me. At the time, I didn't know, because I didn't know I had cancer. But now I see the difference. Now I can see it, and it's enlightening. And it's not in a sense of like, I'm going to go and raise the roof and walk on water and all of that stuff. It's in a sense of, you know what, I don't have to, I thought I had to be a certain way, or I thought I had to, do certain things and behave a certain way and not say the things and don't do the things, and all of that. And now it's this sense of, oh, I have options and I have choices that I just skipped over
Yeah.
because, I thought life was meant to look a certain way, and it absolutely does not. For me personally, I think I've lived my life very differently, and it's been manufactured that way, it's been orchestrated that way. But it's so funny because even though it was orchestrated that way or manipulated that way, like, I am the happiest I've ever been in my life, in my entire life, even having just had cancer, you
Mhm.
know, and that's what I want to show other people. I want to allow them to see that you can, like you quite rightly said, I love you said, got your grief into gold. Oh,
Yeah.
yes, exactly that. Like, yeah.
And
And
it's still like a walking, breathing embodiment. It's not like you just sort of go through this experience and pop out the other side. Like you said, upon reflection, it's like with each breath you take and with each footstep that move in front of the other, like it's a rebirthing space, and it's a slow, delicate rebirthing
yeah.
process, like moving out of this like dancing with grief cycle. Yeah.
And
Uh,
absolutely, and
death
it's
cycle.
and you're kind of like coming from a space as well of like, because I talk to a lot of women about, especially about toxic relationships, because that was, one of my key big programs was detox, and that was all about, going from this toxic relationships, and how do you then get into healthy ones, or how do you even feel good
Yes.
after having that toxic relationship. And so that was one of the things. But I'd get some women to say, oh God, but Eve, I feel, this happened, and it triggered me, and I feel like I've gone back to the start. And it's like, you haven't gone back to the start. What you've done is you feel like you've gone back to the start, but you're working from experience of that relationship now. You're working from the wisdom. Your body has the wisdom to understand that this happened this time round,
Mhm.
right? Your body understands
Yeah.
that this shit thing happened. Instead of sticking with it and staying with it, you've changed. There's a choice that now occurs from that. And it's what you do with it, and then it's feeling safe. Right now, you feel safe. Now you're going to make sure you're not in survival mode. And if you are, that's fine. You can sit in it, but don't stay in it for too long. Work on how do you move out of that. And it's all of those beautiful things of like, we never go back to the beginning. We just start from another space of expertise because we find
Yeah.
shit that's happened. So
I
let's
love that.
move forward.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. It's such a beautiful way of looking at that. I'm sure there was like many other things that I wanted to touch base on, but I really wanted to give you this space to kind of like feel into your body and feel into if there's any sort of like bits of wisdom or takeaway that you want to really share with everyone that's kind of listened today, about, dancing with death and how to dance with it.
That's okay. You know what? You got to let yourself do what you need to do. If do not repress the feelings that you feel. Allow yourself to just be and do what it needs to do in that moment. Don't ever feel like you're going back. Make you feel like your body is just learning its wisdom and it's moving forward, moving to a different space, a different choice, a different moment in time. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's probably lots more I could say on that, but I think it would be a whole nother episode.
I think my biggest piece, or my biggest, like, I might get a bit fiery actually, is to, as somebody who has experienced this, uh, dancing with death quite often. I've been around a lot of people who have died, in my young life, very close people to me. It's surreal, and I suppose that's why I probably have like a little bit of a more intimate relationship with death. But fucking build your capacity, people. Like, I'm like, build your fucking capacity so that you can be one of those people that can actually hold death, right? And not just for yourself. I'm not talking just for yourself. I'm talking about for your family, for your loved ones. We need more people that can hold death and
Mm,
that can dance with death so deliciously and delicately that it can be a portal of reclamation and transformation. I really like, it pisses me off that we live in a society that turns away, shuts our eyes, and goes, let's not talk about this through some of the most intense, horrific, grieving experiences of death, miscarriages, abortions, cancers, ailments. Like, I don't have to go over them again and again, but it's like, be somebody's safe place, be somebody's safe haven, right? We shouldn't be so repressed and so shut down and so afraid that we're living in this like disembodied state for other people's comfort. Like, we should be able to show up grieving and in our death, and for others to be able to see that and not feel like, there's something wrong with us, or move us into victim, or they move into savior. It's like, just move into full self, like, acceptance, build your fucking capacity to hold and not take on and try and martyr somebody else's experience. But honestly, truly build your fucking capacity so that when your best friend rings you up after their cancer appointment and tells you, I have fucking cancer, what am I going to do? Am I going to die? You're able to sit with that and be with that, because I feel like that is what we need for people to have their own transformations and their own experiences without taking and stripping it away from them
yeah.
and dishonoring them in their experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, with you, it was so weird because saying it out loud. And I was like, I know the person I need to have a chat with. I know who it is.
But it's true, right? Like, how many people just shut their mouths? How many people go away and die of cancer because they don't want to tell anyone
Yeah.
and don't want to let anyone know? And each to their own. Like, if that feels really in alignment and true to them, that they want to do walkabout and like disappear, beautiful. But if they're actually completely in pain and hurting and really wanting connection, and we as a society have allowed that because we can't sit in our uncomfort over this fucking perfectly normal human experience of death, then I don't know, man. I don't know where we've gone wrong.
Mm. Yeah. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Ooh, does that feel complete for you? Is there anything else you want to tack on to that?
No, I feel like that's yeah, the only thing I will say is like it's not, not just the death, like physical death, the death of all these other things as well, the death of a relationship and this like coming back, going back and forth as well in a toxic relationship. Like I think there's such a because we do it, and I think there's this like real stigma, and so then what happens is the person that is keeps going back doesn't therefore then tell the truth. And
Do it in silence. Yes.
I feel like that is just because their friend said, I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, you've told you not to go back to this person and you keep doing it. Like, I get it. That would be like quite frustrating. But I think as well, like, again, it's this like, but they have to go through their own death. Like, you have to hold space for that. And it might take however long. But like, allowing, and I just think as well, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because I do think a lot of deaths happen because of that too.
Agreed. And I'm so glad you actually sticky taped that into that because that's what I was going to reflect on too. It's because so many deaths and it happen because of silence,
Yeah.
right? Because of shame, because they shut down, because they don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And so they shut down and they keep it in hidden and silenced, and then that's what happens. And it's gone on too long. Like we should never be ashamed or silenced for our experience. And if you're sitting around tables of women or people or humans that basically try and silence you or shut you down or shame you, or like their comfort is more important than your experience, oof, you're sitting around the wrong table of people. And I know personally, because I've had to remove so many people from my life recently who were sitting around a table of silencing and shutting down, and they are not. I want people who have capacity and can hold.
Yeah.
And you're one of those people, Eve. You've sat there multiple times and let me move through my death cycles and dancing with death numerous times without ever getting bored with it. And I didn't need you to save me or do anything. I moved through it myself, and that's the gift of having capacity and being able to hold these.
That is the gift. That is the gift. Yeah, for sure.
All right, my love. I thank you so much. We could talk about this, and I'm pretty sure it's been a very long episode. It's been very deep. It could be a bit triggering for some of you, actually hearing about somebody's experience moving through this. Like, what is it like? But if you feel the need to reach out, ask any questions, please feel free to reach out to Eve. I'll put all her links on everything as I do. Yeah, or myself for support. And yeah, I'm just sending you so much love. Here's to the women and the people that dance with grief. Why do I keep saying that? Dance with death deliciously. Eve, I would love for you to take us out and yeah, share with people how they can find you, what sort of offerings you have, and yeah, all the spaces, all that yumminess of you, my lovely darling.
I am on Facebook and I am on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook under Ever Healing. I think I haven't changed that yet. I have a page there, or you can search me Eve Milford, or yeah, on Instagram I think it's Evie Milford, and and I have a website as well. It's everhealing.com.au. And I have, at the moment, I'm just about to release an ebook. It's all about triggers, and it is done from a somatic and energy point of view. So it's not all about the mindset, because if we skip all of these other parts, the mindset kind of doesn't really bother, it just covers it up. So it's from a somatic and energy point of view, and that will be hopefully released when this is released. And yeah, and I've got lots happening on my YouTube channel as well. It's not much on there at the moment, but there's going to be lots about cancer, supporting cancer, again from a holistic energy kind of point of view as well on that. So yes.
Thank you so much. It truly is an honor. I am so glad that we have this connection. And yeah, honestly, watch out. Hold on to your knickers for Eve, because I feel like she's going to do some big, big things in this world. And yeah, if you're not following her along with this very much needed area of expertise, like you'll be missing out. So her name's going to be in highlights, honestly. I love you, Eve. Thank you so much for sharing so raw. And I know it's probably one of the first times you've shared this story, like pretty full on, right? So thank you. It's an honor that you've done this here. And see you all next time. Mwah.